Great. So I'm Georgie Nikram. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Technical Assistance and Capacity Building Program Manager for the Best Starts for Kids initiative. Thank you again for joining us today. Co-facilitating this information session today is my Best Starts colleague, Carrie Lippy. Carrie, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm excited to be here with you all. I am the evaluator for the TA and Capacity Building Program. So, hey, that's it.
So let's just quickly look together at the agenda so you know what's coming and approximately when it's coming. So we're first going to provide an overview of Best Starts for Kids to ground us in the why Best Starts exists and the foundations and purposes of Best Starts for Kids. And then we're going to move on to this particular request for qualifications, and we'll explain who's eligible to apply and some details about how to apply. Then we're going to talk a bit about the criteria that we'll be using when we review applications and we do interviews. We'll follow that with about 20 minutes or 10 minutes of Q&A. So we hope you'll write down any questions you have while we're going through the slides, and feel free to ask us those questions during the Q&A. And lastly, we're going to have some time during the end when you can introduce yourself briefly. We're just thinking your name, your organization's name, if you have an organization name, and your main areas of expertise. So this is just a chance to get to know each other a little bit. Don't feel pressured. If you don't want to introduce yourself today, that's fine. We're not scoring this. It's just to get a sense of who's in the room. And it also could give you a chance to get to know the other providers of technical assistance and capacity building in King County. And we're not going to record that part of the session.
Great. And as Georgie mentioned, feel free to add your questions into the Zoom chat. I'll be monitoring that to make sure we can kind of intersplice questions as they come, or you can unmute and ask questions during the Q&A section, which will take place around 10:35 or so. And if you think of a question after this info session, you can basically just email the RFQ coordinator at the email here, or you can go into Zoom Grants and check the frequently asked questions document. It might list the answer that you're looking for. Okay, Georgie, back to you.
So let's take a few minutes to set the framework of this Best Starts for Kids request for qualifications, or RFQ, that we're talking about today. So Best Starts for Kids is a King County initiative that's jointly operated by the Community and Human Services Department and the Public Health Department. Our vision at Best Starts for Kids is that we want to see babies born healthy, we want to see kids thrive, and we want to see young people in King County grow up to be happy, healthy, successful adults. And the Best Starts for Kids mission is to strengthen families and communities so that babies are born healthy, children thrive, and establish a strong foundation in life, and young people grow into happy, healthy adults. And we're guided in everything we do by our Children and Youth Advisory Board's leadership and the equity statement that they developed together to lead Best Starts for Kids. The equity statement says, in part, equity is an ardent journey toward well-being as defined by the affected. Equity is disruptive and uncomfortable and not voluntary. Equity is fundamental to the community that we want to build. And this part of our equity and social justice statement is just very appropriate for this RFQ that we're talking about today. Best Starts for Kids recognizes that persistent inequities exist, especially by race and place, that in many cases are getting worse and threatening collective prosperity for families in our city and county. Best Starts for Kids is working to invest in organizations that are reflective of and embedded in the communities they serve, and those that recognize and address disparities and disproportionalities, as well as the strength, assets, and ingenuity of communities possess in the face of these inequities. And finally, the principles that Best Starts keeps at the core of its funding and its activities, like technical assistance and capacity building, are promotion, prevention, early intervention, and policies and systems change.
Great. And this investment is part of the 2022 to 2027 Best Starts for Kids levy, which was passed in August of 2021. This will be the second round of TA and capacity building funding for this levy. So contracts will start in early 2025 and go through the end of 2027. We have approximately $5 million for this TA and capacity building RFQ opportunity, and those contracts again will last about 3 years. So through this RFQ, we're seeking TA and capacity building providers to provide resources and strengthen the assets and capacities of community-based organizations to better reach BSK's vision of every baby born and child raised to reach adulthood happy, healthy, safe, and thriving. BSK strives to offer free TA and capacity building that's rooted in community strengths, needs, and values. So as noted earlier, before awards are made, Best Starts provides technical assistance to applicants, so culturally responsive assistance with proposal development for RFP opportunities. BSK recognizes that many organizations and the communities they serve have historically experienced barriers to accessing funding from government agencies such as King County. So, to address this, BSK provides TA to remove linguistic, cultural, and procedural barriers that might prevent qualified organizations from seeking BSK funding. For capacity building, BSK also recognizes it will not reach its goal if it only provides programming funds to our partner organizations. Funded organizations often want to build leadership, staff, and organizational capacity to better serve children, youth, and families. As a result, BSK sets aside funding for capacity building to support our funded organization's strength and sustainability. BSK's capacity building support is the provision and co-creation of information, tools, and resources, along with ongoing coaching and support to strengthen programs, organizations, and systems capabilities. Both TA and capacity building are completely voluntary for BSK funded orgs. TA and capacity building is an on-demand system in which BSK funded organizations seek the TA and capacity building that they need. The overall goal of this RFQ's funding is to provide thousands of hours of TA and capacity building to support hundreds of CBOs over the second 3-year period of the 2022 to 2027 BSK levy.
Thanks, Carrie. And through this RFQ, we hope to identify and contract with up to 20 skilled people or consultants to provide TA and capacity building to community-based organizations. So TA is provided to organizations before they receive Best Starts funding. It's the help that is provided as they're applying for Best Starts funding. And capacity building is what we call the help, the support that consultants can provide after organizations are funded. We currently have 355 Best Starts funded organizations. So those community-based organizations are the ones that the TA and capacity builders are going to support. So people who are eligible to apply for this RFQ are not-for-profit organizations, community-based organizations, tribes and tribal organizations, and private consultants with experience in the needs of organizations that serve children, families, and communities. Applicants must have experience providing culturally responsive services to a diversity of community-based organizations. Community-based individuals, consultants, and organizations are encouraged to submit applications. So please take a look at the list of eligibility and qualifications on page 7 and 8 of the RFQ for more details of what we're looking for from applicants. In addition to the 10 types of capacity building support that we've been providing, our community-based organization partners, the Best Starts for Kids partners who are the beneficiaries of TA and CB, they have been requesting expertise in the following areas, in addition to what we always hope to provide. So for TA, those TA providers need to have grant writing expertise, particularly experience with government grants. That's been highly valued. And for capacity building, executive coaching has been in demand. So we're looking for experience with leadership coaching. Nonprofit finance guidance and skills in fiscal software, such as QuickBooks or MIP, or there are others. Data and evaluation database knowledge in platforms such as Apricot or Neon One or Salesforce, and there are many others. IT support for tasks such as moving data from computers to the cloud or setting up SharePoint, Microsoft 365, and other nonprofit technology expertise. And then having fluency in languages other than English is highly valued for our TA and CB providers. And then this is where, Carrie, I was hoping you'd put a copy of our one-pager into the chat, which explains the kinds of capacity building that we make available to Best Starts for Kids partners. So again, the TA is before they get funded, but then capacity building is sort of a bigger body of work that has 10 forms of different topic areas of capacity building that is available.
Georgie, there was a question in the chat from Alana around do private consultants also include, or does private consultants also include businesses for folks who are structured as a corporation, for example?
Yes, many times the consultants that we've contracted with in the past are private for-profit consultant firms and they're LLCs. So yeah, hope that answers the question. Okay, so organizations awarded through this procurement process will contract with King County DCHS, and funded organizations will be required to meet baseline requirements, including having insurance, equal employment opportunity policies, record keeping, and more. You can see a sample of the department's standard services contract boilerplate with terms and conditions on a link that, Carrie, maybe you can put in the chat. Would that be okay?
Sorry, I was reading the chat. Sorry, what was it that you wanted me to add?
Oh yeah, no, there's a link
to the RFQ.
And I can do it later too.
No, I'll do it. Yep, sorry.
And then this next part that I'm going to say is just information for those who don't have a formal consulting organization right now, because we want to encourage that there may be people in our community who are experts in nonprofit organizational development who might not have a formal consulting firm right now, but might be interested in this opportunity. So if you don't have a formal consulting organization yet, whether you're a single consultant or you're a team of independent people who want to provide this kind of service, that is okay, and we welcome applications from you. Individuals can apply. You would need to submit, when you contract with us, a King County W-9 form, and you must have liability insurance. A group of individuals partnering together can apply also. They would need to designate one person as the lead with whom King County would contract and who would invoice and receive funds each month. The group would want to make sure that they have a memorandum of understanding or a letter of agreement contract among that group about how they're handling the funding, etc. And we'd require a copy of that. The other members of the group who aren't the lead person would technically be considered subcontractors, and King County also requires a copy of all subcontracts. So that's the end of that little part. I guess I should also say that however you and your partners are organized, you should be clear in your application responses about the way you're organized. You would indicate who you are in your answers to general questions number 3, which is where you tell us the topics you have expertise in, along with the names of the consultants in your group who would do that work. You can also talk about it in narrative question number 2, where you tell us about your previous experience. You can note there in question 2, for example, that you'll be providing TA or CB as a newly formed partnership of consultants, for example, or as an individual, or however your organization looks. You should provide the name of the lead person on the application summary page where it says CEO or principal consultant contact. And you can also mention it in narrative question number 2. I know that's a lot of logistics, but I think it'll become more clear as we talk more about it.
Also, Georgie, there was another question in the chat from Bria around, are those subcontractors considered principal staff?
So it really depends on how you've formed. I mean, if you have formed an LLC, then those people would be considered employees of the consultancy and staff. But if you haven't formed a real organization and it's just one person with subcontractors, then that's the structure of your organization. And I don't think that could be considered staff because you haven't formed gone through some steps to become a business yet. But I could be wrong about that. I'm not an expert in all of the all of that. But there is more information online. And if you have other questions, we can put our email in the chat, or you could send an email to Leslie, who's also here, and she's our colleague from Contracts and Procurement. And Leslie Miller can answer questions via email that might get more into the weeds of that. So, okay, this slide is where we just want to talk about some of the logistics. You need to submit applications in Zoom Grants by 2 p.m. on the afternoon of Friday, September 27th. So the first step is to go to zoomgrants.com and create an account if you don't already have one created. It would definitely be good to do that ahead of time. And then in Zoom Grants, you can either search for this opportunity. It has the title of BSK Technical Assistance and Capacity Building Provider RFQ. Or an easier way to get started is to click on this link that I think Carrie is going to put in the chat. And that will go directly to this RFQ opportunity in Zoom Grants. So if you haven't already created a Zoom Grants account, at that point, after you click on this link, you'll be prompted to create a Zoom Grants account. If you do have trouble at the last minute, you've been trying to get everything into Zoom Grants and you have trouble technically, you could at the last minute, before 2 p.m. on the 27th, you would have to email your full application to the DCHS contracts@kingcounty.gov email address, which we're going to be giving you later. So there is that sort of last minute out, but we really want the applications in Zoom Grants. So the best policy is to just start early on your application and to not wait until the last minute to submit it, because Zoom Grants is a national platform that gets a little clogged up and moves slowly and doesn't save things very well when there are a lot of people applying for something at the last minute. So that's where we find everyone has some frustrations. So if you are doing it a day ahead of time, submitting it ahead of time, then you probably won't run into those issues with Zoom Grants. So we just encourage everyone to start early and don't try to hit submit at the last minute. Okay, we are contracting approximately $5 million over 3 years toward the TA and capacity building. The contracts will be for 3 years in length, as Carrie mentioned earlier, and the contract period is approximately January 1st of 2025 through the end of December 2027. For the amount of contracts, the applicants won't be putting a funding request into your applications. There is no budget to be created and submitted. What you'll do is you'll share your available hours with us when you go through the contract negotiation portion of this. So after you've been awarded, we would talk about it and we would come to an agreement based on the number of hours that you estimate you have available to provide toward Best Starts for Kids partners, helping them, combined with how much money Best Starts Kid has available. And we'll provide an up to amount in your contract. And then TA and capacity building work comes in from the community-based organizations on an on-demand basis, meaning as community-based organizations request technical assistance or capacity building, you would get work. There's no guarantee that you'll get a certain amount of work or that you'll be reaching the ceiling amount in your contract. But Best Starts for Kids will be advertising the services, to all community-based organizations that might be interested in applying for TA. And then in the past, both TA and CB have been steadily in demand. We also advertise it to our Best Starts for Kids partners consistently to try to let it be known that there is this capacity building support available to them. So TA has its ups and downs in demand because it's only in demand when Best Starts for Kids has RFPs open to the general public. And then when we don't have RFPs open, demand is low. So it kind of goes up and down, but capacity building is pretty much constantly in demand to a certain extent as Best Starts partners take advantage of it throughout their 3-year contracts. And finally, we anticipate contracting with 6 technical assistance providers. Actually, I think more like 8 technical assistance providers. Yeah, I put 8 in the slides. Around 4, possibly 5 data and evaluation specific capacity builders, and around 12 general capacity building contracts. So it's possible that a few consultants or firms will cross over and be both a general capacity builder and a data and evaluation capacity builder. And it's also possible that consultants could be both a TA provider and a general capacity builder. So this slide provides all the dates, and some of which we've already noted, but also just kind of puts them into context in a timeline. So the RFQ was released on August 4th. The online information sessions again are today, and then another one exactly like this on September 10th. The deadline to contact King County with questions is September 23rd, and we'll provide some information on how you can do that later. The application due date, again, is September 27th at 2 p.m., and that's a very strict deadline. And then applications are rated and reviewed by a review panel September 30th through October 31st. The applicant interview and reference check period is in there between October 21st and 25th. And then we hope to notify everyone of their RFQ status in November. The contract discussions will then take place in November and December of 2024. And we hope to start with contracts with TA and CB being provided on January 1st. So let's see. On to you, Carrie.
Great. So BSK strives to partner with organizations that serve and are led by their own communities. We're looking for consultants who can show a commitment to equity and social justice principles through their leadership, staffing, and services. We're also looking for consultants with deep connections to BSK's focus communities, those facing disparities by race and place. As Georgie mentioned, we're prioritizing contractors who have fluency in languages other than English and who have a strong track record of providing culturally responsive services. We're looking for contractors who value co-creation, which is, like working with partners to develop solutions and complete projects, not just complete them for partners. We urge you to read the entire RFQ. There are more qualifications, in particular to make sure that you're reading the eligibility and qualification section on pages 7 and 8 of the RFQ. Next slide. Oh, thanks. As part of our effort to evaluate this program, TA and capacity building providers will submit monthly invoices and tracking spreadsheets to Best Starts. We want to be responsive to feedback from community members receiving TA and capacity building to let us know how we can improve. So we'll ask organizations to complete short surveys to make sure they're getting the assistance they need. We'll also ask TA providers and capacity builders to complete brief surveys and sometimes focus groups to provide feedback. Capacity building and TA providers will work together with Best Starts staff and the BSK partners who are receiving CB and TA to deliver the most responsive services possible. We'll meet quarterly to discuss how the program services are going, share best practices, and talk about what resources Best Starts could provide. Capacity building providers will complete a simple letter of agreement with each organization they work with so that everyone is on the same page with the scope and timing of each capacity building project. These will be shared with King County and help us track the capacity building that's happening.
Complete proposals will include all of the following: responses to summary questions, which you can find in the application summary tab of Zoom Grants, responses to the general and narrative questions, which can be found in the general questions and the narrative question tabs of Zoom Grants. And then you would use Exhibit A as reference to complete the general questions and narrative question tabs within Zoom Grants. All the questions must be answered for the application to be considered responsive. We've included Exhibit A as a separate document in the Zoom Grants library, and it's a Word document, so you can open it up and use it if that's helpful to you. And then uploading attachments. We'd like you to upload resumes of principal consultants who will provide technical assistance and or capacity building. Please don't make them longer than 2 pages per resume. And they should be uploaded into the attachments tab in Zoom Grants. This helps us to understand the depth and breadth of the services that you'll be able to provide to CBOs. And then 1 or 2 technical assistance or capacity building tools or resources could be uploaded as well, that you have created, or it doesn't have to be something that you've created. It could be something that you just use with your community-based organization clients. That will give us a clear idea of like how you work with them. And then a 1-page professional reference list with a minimum 2 and a maximum of 3 references listed should be uploaded into the attachments tab in Zoom Grants as well. References should be community serving organizations that the applicant has supported with either technical assistance, application assistance, or grant writing, or capacity building in the past. Could be there are many, many topics that you could be helping a community-based organization with, and who would be willing to talk to us about your work. So that's what we'd like in terms of references.
And Georgie, there are a couple of questions in the chat.
Okay, sure.
So Alana is wondering, are admin hours and evaluation hours, so those spent on the service and focus groups, billable hours?
So, sorry.
Yeah, the admin hours and evaluation hours, are they billable? And they are.
Yes. So definitely when Best Starts for Kids has a designated meeting that the capacity builders or TA providers need to attend, we usually call that a convening, and we do them quarterly. And yes, we pay them for their time, the same rate that we pay them to provide services to the community. If there is administrative time that needs to be that happens at the consultant's end of things, like figuring out logistics of doing a project, then that is billed at the half rate. There is an administrative half rate of $87.50. But that most duties that you'll perform, you get paid at the full rate. And for evaluation, definitely, when we do a focus group, ask you to participate in a focus group, then yes, we would be paying you for your time.
And then Jillian asked, must folks include 1 resume for each subcontractor as well?
If the subcontractor is going to be working with our Best Starts partners, yes, we are asking for all resumes of people who are going to be providing the capacity building services.
And then last one from Sherry, which is, what about travel time?
Yeah, as I mentioned, travel time is covered. We haven't had a lot of it, very little of it actually, in this last 3-year period, because most of the capacity building has been provided by through Zoom or Teams, I think, between the consultants. But sometimes that does happen. Like, for example, IT capacity builders sometimes need to actually travel to the community-based organization and help with their servers or install things. Sometimes facilitators, if a capacity builder is an organizational development facilitator, and they're facilitating a board and staff retreat, that's often a request from our community-based organizations. And we pay for travel within King County, and we pay travel time, and that's at the half rate, the $87.50 rate.
Thanks, Georgie.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. So there's going to be several
Also,
phases.
Georgie, sorry, I just wanted to flag that it's about 10:34, so I just wasn't sure. I wanted to make sure we had enough time for questions. Although people are asking questions throughout, but just wanted to flag it too.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you. There will be several phases of this rating and review process, and this green table that I'm showing is just a simplified version of the rubric that you can find on page 12 and 13 of the RFQ. So after your applications are submitted on September 27th, a review panel is going to read your application, and the summary, general, and narrative questions are listed on page 20 and 21 of the RFQ, as well as being in Zoom grants. You should note the way the questions relate to the scoring rubric. So we recommend you look at pages 12 and 13 to see the way that Best Starts is going to score each of the narrative questions and each of these other parts of the process. In phase 1, the review panel will score the answers to the narrative questions, and that part is worth 65 points total. And then the top scoring applicants or finalists will then be contacted, so that group will get narrowed, and they'll be contacted between October 16th and 18th to set up virtual interviews. We'll be using Teams for virtual interviews. Those interviews are going to be worth 25 points. Not everyone who submits an application will be interviewed, only those with higher scores. We anticipate interviewing around 25 finalists. All interviews will take place the week of October 21st through 25th, and they'll be about 45 minutes long, and as I said, they'll occur using Teams. And then finally, the reference checks are worth 10 points. This is, as I said, 2 or 3 professional references. They should be people at organizations where you provided TA or capacity building who are willing to talk to us about your TA and CB. So there is a list in the RFQ of things that you should include on that list, including their name and their contact information, etc. And then references of the applicants who are being considered for the award will be contacted, and yes, we'll be asking them to tell us about their TA or CB experience with you. This slide is just reiterating that all proposals will go through the formal review process. The review panel will carefully follow the scoring rubric that's found on pages 12 and 13 of the RFQ. Remember that the full RFQ is a PDF document that's been uploaded and can be found right now in the library tab in Zoom Grants. We highly recommend that you read the entire thing. It has many more details that we're not able to completely share in this webinar. So a few application tips. Please let us know what languages you speak, read, or write. Please be very clear about who will be providing TA and capacity building, like individuals in your team or your organization. Please be clear about whether you're applying to provide TA and or CB, both by checking the correct boxes and by talking about it in the narrative questions. If you're applying to be a CB provider, let us know which topic areas that you want to provide and any specific expertise you have. I mentioned this a little earlier, but some examples might be if you're an expert in any kind of software or system used by nonprofit organizations, such as Apricot, Aplos, Salesforce, please let us know. And there are many, many others. So let us know that. The place to showcase any IT or data and evaluation expertise or legal expertise or finance system expertise is in narrative question number 3. Most of the narrative questions have a character limit of 3,500 characters. We don't want you to spend too much time writing. Please just answer the question completely, and there is no need to go up to 3,500 characters if you don't need to. So being concise is great. The next information session will be the 10th at 3 p.m. if you want to tell a friend or colleague. You don't need to attend that September 10th info session. It'll be just like this one. You can email Leslie Miller, as I mentioned earlier, any questions that you have. You can reach her directly or in Zoom Grants. So you can use this email address that you see here, or also in Zoom Grants, when you click on general questions, there's a little ask a general question link that appears underneath. And when you click that and you write in your question, those emails also go to Leslie. So you can do that. To find any amendments to this opportunity, go to zoomgrants.com, get to this TA and CB RFQ, and then go to the Show Library button. It's blue. And then you scroll down near the bottom to see all the documents that we've uploaded. So again, you'll see the RFQ PDF there right now. We've also, as I mentioned, uploaded a Word version of the narrative questions there in case that's helpful as you craft your responses. You'll want to have the easiest thing to do in Zoom Grants is to have that typed out in a Word document or some other document and cut and paste it into Zoom Grants. Instead of trying to compose things in Zoom Grants, people have had trouble with that because sometimes Zoom Grants is glitchy when saving. Okay, we are also going to put a link to the recording from today into the FAQ, and when Leslie receives any new questions, she'll also add them to the FAQ amendment, and we're going to be uploading new versions of that FAQ amendment into the library section on Zoom Grants. So please do keep checking back and reading that FAQ. You may have your questions answered by reading the questions that other people have asked and we've answered already. And then you can also see the glossary of terms on page 15 for any relevant definitions. And we will also post the slides that you're seeing today in Zoom Grants in the library.
Great.
How are we doing on time, Carrie?
We are cutting it a little close, but I feel good about it. So it's 10:40. What do you say we do like another 10 minutes of questions, and then we give people up to 15 seconds to provide an intro. It looks like there's about 30 folks in the room, which is awesome. Yeah, I'm curious what you think. I'm kind of, yeah.
Well, we may have answered a lot of questions during the presentation. Let's see. Let's have some Q&A time.
Yeah, there is a question already around clarity around the coverage of travel within King County. So does that mean if someone is traveling from Snohomish or Pierce that the travel costs will not be covered until they enter the county? Do you know that?
I don't know the answer to that. It's my understanding that we'll cover the travel within King County, and that's all I really know. And we haven't had that question before, but I'm not a complete stickler about things like that. So I guess that would have to be something that I'll check into, and then we can put the answer in the FAQ. How about that?
Perfect. And then did you want to turn off the
Sure.
screen share so we can all
that's good.
See each other if we want? Yeah, so please feel free to chime in, come off mute, put things in the chat. It's an opportunity to ask all your questions.
I guess I could raise my hand. I just had a quick question. What languages are in high demand for the CBOs right now?
Well, Spanish is number one. So Spanish, and then it has been really helpful to have TA and capacity builders who speak Korean, Vietnamese, Chinese, Somali. It's also helpful. Russian has been helpful in the past. So those are the top. Any others, Carrie, that have come to mind for you?
I feel like you covered a lot of the major ones.
Okay.
Thank you.
Welcome.
I have a couple questions. Number one is, are you prioritizing the folks that are currently contracted in any way in the next round? And the second question is about just talking a little bit about the scale of the capacity building projects. Like, how long do providers typically work with organizations doing capacity building projects? Could it be like a 6-month or even longer kind of a thing? Like, how often do you generally, could just talk more about the depth and sort of breadth of the capacity building projects, please?
Yeah, good questions. Thank you. We are not prioritizing the TA and CB providers that we currently have under contract. We, as a government agency, have to go through a completely competitive and open process when we contract again. So yeah, they will not receive any extra points for being current contractors. And then depth-wise, we have had a real range in capacity building projects, and we're very fortunate that the voters of King County have supported Best Starts for Kids initiative, which includes a healthy budget of TA and CB, and we don't have to limit the amount in an arbitrary way. We do have we put a few bumpers up around projects so that they don't go on forever. We do have to say sometimes, hey, these capacity building projects have a beginning and end. They're not go on forever projects. And we need to see that there are clear deliverables and that our we explain that to the Best Arts for Kids partners as well, that, you know, the projects are meant so that the capacity builders will come in and co-create with you so that you're able to do this work going forward. And that, so it's not like a consultant who will come in and do the work for you. There are limits to the work that they can do. That said, it's a pretty wide breadth of projects that can take place. So all to say, we don't have really set limits on projects. And yes, they can go over 6 months.
Great, thank you.
We really prioritize, I guess, what does the organization need? And is it capacity building? Then yes, we can support that.
Great, thanks. Can you say a little bit about how, maybe I missed this, how people are paired? And you said there's an estimation of, in the contracting process, that we would estimate how much we're available, but then how much leeway is there once the contracts are started to be able to say yes or no to different opportunities as they arise? I'm just speaking as someone who works with a bunch of organizations and kind of has an ebb and flow of work that I can't always predict.
Right. I mean, our capacity builders are always having to check in with their own schedule, and they have ways of project managing their own work so that they're not overextending themselves. And so what generally happens is a request will come in, and sometimes the Best Arts for Kids partner has a specific consultant in mind, because we're going to be showing them, like, here's the list of consultants we have available. Sometimes they have a preference, and we honor that preference, and we'll match them. We'll reach out to the consultant and see if they're available. That's the first thing we say is, we're not sure if they're available. We're going to ask them, the consultant. And so we ask the consultant if they're available for this project. And if they say yes, then we'll match them in an email. And then they can go forth and do scoping, and they'll provide Carrie and I with a letter of agreement. And then we will know, okay, this project's going to end in 4 months, and it's estimated at being 40 hours. So then when invoices start coming in, we check that matches our expectations of how long that project is. And then what we'd be doing also is asking the community-based organization getting the capacity building in a few months. We'd be saying, hey, did you get the capacity building that you wanted? And we also have this open door policy where they can be communicating with us if they're not getting the help that they need. If the consultant's not being responsive, then we do hear from them. And that's sort of how we do the checking and, you know, making sure that everyone's getting what they need. There definitely comes a time when I send out, if the organization does not have a preference, then what happens is I'll send out an email to all the consultants who have the expertise that this organization is looking for. And then the consultants will answer back. And then usually it's the first one to answer back that I match with the community-based organization. I was going to say something else, but I can't remember what it was. Am I missing anything, Carrie?
I don't think so.
I know that's a lot.
Very thorough, thank you.
Okay.
Hi, can I ask a quick question? I think you mentioned about uploading your tool, whatever tool you may be using. And I just wanted to clarify or ask, are you referring to like different methodologies you may use? So for example, if you have a methodology for strategy development or coaching, are those the tools that you're referring to?
That would be a great thing to upload. That would give us a clear idea of the kind of work that you do. Yes. But also I was thinking of, if you're a finance person working with nonprofits and you have like a template fiscal policy that you said you wanted to share with us, and that would help us to know, oh, okay, they can do fiscal policy and procedure manuals. That's something that nonprofit organizations often need.
Okay, so in addition, then are you saying like examples?
Yeah, examples.
Okay.
Yeah, if you have any templates. I mean, there could be also something like if you're a marketing person, there might be a flyer that you created for an organization. Or if you're an IT person, there might be just a list of the IT services that you could provide. So it's kind of a breadth. I didn't want to be too specific in that because there might be, I don't want to, I don't know. There might be a lot of different things that you could upload there, but we only want one or two.
Okay,
We don't, yeah. Thank you, Zaina.
thank you.
Hi, Swime.
Hey, Georgie. Thanks so much, Georgie, Carrie, for such detailed description of the RFP and information for application. And I have a quick question. In looking at the general questions, for question 1, it says put an X in the box beside each category of TA and CB you're interested in. And for this one, what I understand is that more than one box could be checked. And then for the second question, it says put an X in one box beside the category you feel you are the strongest at. And for this one, we could only choose one. So for example, if there is, if one of our strengths is TA and then another strength is one area in the CB, so we could only choose one option. Is that correct?
Yes, I know. That's kind of tough, isn't it? But
Yeah.
last time we did this 3 years ago, we asked people to do this and they put, I don't know, they put a bunch anyway. So we constricted it this time. It's helpful to us to know if you consider yourself or your organization to be really strong in one area. And sometimes if we didn't do that question, we would not have a clear idea of what your highest expertise is. So that's why that's there, but don't stress out too much about it. You could also in your narrative say, we noted that we're great at TA, but we also want to note that we have vast experience in data and evaluation or whatever.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful.
Good, thank you. Yvonne?
Hi, thank you all so much for the super helpful information. Quick question about the materials that we wanted to provide as references or examples. Something that might be helpful for me to share a specific example would be strategic planning, which are all very specific to the organization. Will there be any privacy around the references and materials that you receive, just because they're kind of like the insider workings of the organization? I'm sorry, I don't have a better way to
I know what
ask
you
this
mean.
question. Thank
Yeah,
you.
I would say you need to redact. You need
Got
to
it.
cover in black any names that you would submit in an application to us or any other government agency. It then becomes public information.
Perfect.
And it could be pulled in a public information request. So yeah, just be aware that anything you submit to us then becomes public information.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Also, Georgie, there's a question in the chat around, are there any major differences between this iteration of this contract compared to the 2021-2024 one?
There are not any major changes, no. We're not emphasizing coalition building so much in this 3-year period because we've not seen a big demand for coalition building support. And so just for clarity's sake, we have not put a big emphasis on that. But if you are great at coalition building, there's a few mentions of it in there, and you could discuss your skills with facilitation of large groups, for example. But otherwise, no, it's the same as the one in 2021.
Great. I think that was the last question in the chat, unless I'm missing one. Great. Are there any other questions? So I don't know, Georgie, what you want to do.
I know.
It feels maybe too hard.
Well, let's just, if you'd like to come off mute and say hello, we might not get through everyone, or we can go over. So let's end the recording.
Perfect.